The Waldorf Astoria Hotel ballroom in Manhattan was filled with sparkling crystals and haute couture gowns when I felt my tray trembling in my hands. It wasn't fear of the job. I had served hundreds of gala events over the past 2 years. It was the feeling of being watched, that visceral sensation that warns you when someone is studying your every move. My name was Sophie Brennan, 23 years old, brown hair always pulled back in a tight bun, impeccable black uniform, and a single goal in life: save enough money to finish my nursing degree. My mother, Diane, had other plans. She always did. "Sophie, table 17, champagne, now!" The sharp voice of the supervisor, Mrs. Henderson, snapped me from my thoughts. I nodded and walked with measured steps between the tables, dodging couples dancing to the sound of a string orchestra. The air was heavy with expensive perfumes and the aroma of lobster thermidor. Everything there screamed money, the kind of money I would never have. Table 17 was in a strategic corner of the ballroom, slightly elevated with a privileged view of the entire event. 5 men occupied the chairs, tailored suits, watches that cost more than my entire apartment, and that unmistakable aura of power. But it was the man at the center who dominated the space, Dominic Caruso. I knew who he was. Everyone in New York knew, even though nobody spoke about it openly. At 35, he controlled half of Manhattan's legal businesses: casinos, nightclubs, restaurants, and probably the other half of the illegal ones. Black hair slicked back, defined jaw, dark eyes that seemed to calculate a person's worth in seconds. I approached the table with the tray balanced. "Champagne, gentlemen." 4 of them didn't even look at me. But Dominic slowly raised his eyes, and it was like being struck by lightning. He didn't just look, he evaluated. My face, my neck, the way I held the tray, even the small tremor I tried to hide. "Are you new here?" His voice was low, controlled, but carried a weight that made the words seem like an order disguised as a question. "No, sir. I've worked here for 2 years, and I've never seen you before. You must attend different events than the ones I serve." One of the men beside him laughed, but Dominic didn't look away. His lips curved into an almost imperceptible smile. Interesting. I served the champagne in silence, feeling the weight of that gaze following me. When I finished and turned around, I heard his voice again. "What's your name?" I stopped. Every fiber of my body screamed to ignore it, to keep walking. But you don't ignore Dominic Caruso. "Sophie, sir. Sophie." He repeated it, as if testing the sound of the name. "Italian." "Irish." "Brennan." "Irish." He nodded, still with that indefinable smile. "You may go." I returned to the service area with my heart beating at an irregular rhythm. Mrs. Henderson was waiting for me with a strange expression on her face, half worried, half scared. "Did he speak to you?" "He just asked my name." My God. She ran her hand across her forehead. "Sophie, you can't attract his attention. You don't want that kind of attention." I didn't attract any attention. I just did my job. It doesn't matter. Men like Dominic Caruso, they don't ask names by chance. I tried to push away the unease while continuing to work, but throughout the entire night I felt those eyes on me. Every time I passed near table 17, every time I crossed the ballroom, there he was, watching with that disturbing intensity. At 11 at night, when the event began to empty, Mrs. Henderson called me to the dressing room. "You have a visitor at reception." "A visitor? Who?" "Your mother." My stomach churned. Diane never showed up at my work. Never. I grabbed my purse hastily and went down to the hotel lobby, where I found my mother waiting, nervous, smoking a cigarette near the entrance. Something strictly prohibited. "Mom, what are you doing here?" She stared at me, and for the first time in years, I saw something resembling guilt in her eyes. Diane Brennan was a 48-year-old woman who looked 60. Faded blonde hair, skin marked by nights of drinking and bad choices. But at that moment, she also looked terrified. "Sophie, we need to talk." "Now? It's almost midnight. I have class early tomorrow. It's about your debts." I froze. "My debts?" "No, mine." She threw the cigarette on the ground and stepped on it. "Ours." My heart sank. Mom, what did you do? I borrowed money, a lot of money, to pay rent, to cover your tuition from last semester to... From whom did you borrow money? Her silence was louder than any answer. Mom, from whom? From people connected to Dominic Caruso. The world spun. The hotel lights became blurred spots. I leaned against the nearest wall, trying to process what I was hearing. You borrowed money from loan sharks. From loan sharks connected to the mafia. I didn't know what to do, Sophie. We were being evicted. You needed that money to continue studying. And now, how much do you owe? $120,000. I felt bile rise in my throat. $120,000? How did you manage to accumulate $120,000 in debt? The interest, it increased. I couldn't pay. And now, her hands were trembling. Now they want payment, all of it, by the end of the week. And where the hell are we going to get that? Diane didn't answer. She just looked at me with those red, tear-filled eyes. And that's when I understood. When everything fit together in a grotesque and impossible way. No. I took a step back. No, you didn't do that. They offered an alternative. What alternative? You. They want you. The words hung in the air like poison. For a moment I thought I had heard wrong, that my brain had finally collapsed under the weight of working 2 shifts and studying at night. Explain. Now. Diane swallowed hard. Dominic Caruso. He saw you today. He asked about you. And when his men discovered that I was your mother, that I owed money to the organization, they made a proposal. What proposal? Marriage. The world stopped, simply stopped spinning. Marriage. If you agree to marry him, the debt disappears. We're free. You're free. Free? I laughed, but it was a hollow, broken sound. You sold me. You literally sold me to a mobster to pay off your gambling debts. It wasn't like that. They cornered me. They said if the debt wasn't paid, they would kill us, both of us. And your solution was to hand me over like cattle? Sophie, please, don't touch me. I pushed away her hands when she tried to approach. Don't touch me. Diane began to cry, but I was beyond compassion. I was beyond anything that wasn't brutal and numbing shock. You have until tomorrow to decide, she whispered. They'll send someone for your answer at noon. And if I say no, her silence was answer enough. I left the hotel staggering, without direction, without thinking. I walked through the streets of Manhattan for hours, watching the city lights blur with the tears that finally fell. How had my life collapsed so quickly? This morning, I was a nursing student with simple dreams. Now I was being bargained like property. When I finally reached my tiny apartment in the Bronx, the same one Diane had put at risk, it was almost 4 a.m. I sat on the bed, looking at the peeling walls, at the anatomy books stacked on the desk, at the framed photo from my high school graduation. I had 2 choices: agree to marry a man who controlled criminal empires, or condemn myself and my mother, however much she deserved it, to death. There was no real choice. At 11:30 the next morning, a black car with tinted windows stopped in front of the building. A man in a suit got out and rang the apartment buzzer. I went down the stairs with legs heavy as lead. Miss Brennan? He had a thick Italian accent. Yes, Mr. Caruso is waiting for your answer. I closed my eyes. I thought about all the plans I had made, about all the nights studying late, about all the patients I wanted to help someday. And then I thought about the alternative, about 2 bodies found in the East River. Yes. Yes, what? I opened my eyes and looked directly at him. Yes, I accept. He nodded once, as if finalizing a business transaction, which in the end was exactly what it was. Mr. Caruso will come for you at 7 tonight. Wear something appropriate. You'll dine together. Dinner? He likes to get to know his acquisitions before formalizing arrangements. The word acquisitions hit me like a slap, but I had already made my choice. I had already sold my soul. I'll be ready. The man got in the car and left, leaving a cloud of exhaust smoke and the smell of my own fear. I went back up to the apartment and called the college. I canceled my classes for the week. Then I called Mrs. Henderson and quit. She tried to ask why, but I hung up before the words could come out. At 6:30, I was standing in the broken bathroom mirror, wearing the only decent dress I owned. A simple black one I used for job interviews, minimal makeup, hair down for the first time in months. I looked at my reflection and barely recognized the girl staring back at me. Her eyes were empty, resigned. At 7 o'clock sharp, a limousine stopped in front of the building, and then Dominic Caruso himself got out of the back seat. He wore a charcoal gray suit, no tie, the first button of his white shirt open. He walked to the building entrance with the confidence of someone who owned the world, and maybe he did. I went down before he could ring the buzzer. When I opened the door, he studied me from head to toe, with that same intensity from the gala ball. But now, there was something more. Ownership. Sophie Brennan. He spoke my full name as if testing its weight. "You're more beautiful without the waitress uniform." I didn't respond. I couldn't find words that weren't a scream. He extended his arm. "Shall we?" I looked at that hand, strong with a scar at the base of the thumb, and saw exactly what it represented. A cage, a life sentence, the end of everything I had planned. But I put my hand in his and got into the limousine that would take me to a destination from which there was no return. As the car glided through the illuminated streets of Manhattan, Dominic leaned back in the leather seat, watching me with that indecipherable expression. "You're afraid," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes." "Good. Fear keeps you alive." He served 2 glasses of scotch from a built-in bar. He offered one to me. "But you don't need to be afraid of me, not yet." I took the glass with trembling hands. "Not yet? As long as you follow the rules." "And what are the rules?" He smiled, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You'll find out." The limousine turned right, leaving the city, heading towards some unknown place. And as the lights of New York disappeared in the rearview mirror, I realized a terrible truth. My life as Sophie Brennan was over. Now I was property of Dominic Caruso, and hell was just beginning. The restaurant was in a historic building on the Upper East Side, the kind of place without a sign on the door, where you only entered if you knew it existed, and if you were invited. Dominic guided me inside with a firm hand on my back, a gesture that might seem gentlemanly to any external observer, but I felt the weight of that hand, the control. The interior was all dark wood, discreet crystal chandeliers, and tables separated by screens that guaranteed absolute privacy. There were no more than 10 occupied tables. Men in suits conversed in low voices. Impeccably dressed women smiled with that kind of elegance that comes from generations of money. "Mr. Caruso," an elderly maitre d' approached immediately, bowing slightly. "Your table is ready." "Thank you, Antonio." We were led to an isolated corner on the second floor, with a view of Park Avenue through frosted glass windows. The table was set with fine porcelain and silver cutlery. A single red rose rested in a crystal vase at the center. Dominic pulled out the chair for me. I sat mechanically, feeling the weight of all those curious gazes following us until we disappeared behind the screen. He sat across from me, picked up the menu and pushed it aside without looking. "Antonio knows what I like. Do you have any dietary restrictions?" "No." "Allergies?" "No." "Great." He gestured and a waiter appeared immediately. "The tasting menu, and bring the 2015 Barolo." The waiter disappeared without taking notes. Dominic leaned back in his chair, crossed his arms, and studied me with that disturbing intensity. "You're nervous." "Anyone would be." "Fair." He uncrossed his arms and placed his hands on the table. Large, strong hands, with slightly marked knuckles. Hands that had hurt people. "But let me tell you how this is going to work. You're going to ask questions. I'm going to answer, honestly. Why? Because I don't like misunderstandings. And because you're going to be my wife. You deserve to know who you're marrying." The word wife hit me again like a punch. I had agreed, but hearing it out loud made everything grotesquely real. "All right." I took a deep breath. "Why do you want to marry me? You don't even know me." Dominic smiled, a genuine smile this time, which lit something dangerous in his dark eyes. Do you want the honest answer or the polite answer? Honest. I saw you at that gala ball and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Interest. You were different from all those perfumed and empty women dancing around me. You had substance, purpose, and when I discovered that you worked as a waitress to pay for nursing school while supporting a gambling-addicted mother, he paused. I was impressed. Impressed enough to buy me? I didn't buy you. I paid a debt and offered a solution. A solution? My voice came out louder than I intended. You turned my life into a business transaction. Your mother did that. I just finalized the deal. He leaned forward. But let me be clear, Sophie. You can hate me. You can scream, cry, break things. But you're going to marry me, and you're going to fulfill your role. What role? Wife, companion, the woman by my side at public events, the mother of my children eventually. My stomach churned. Children? Not immediately. We have time for that. He picked up his water glass and drank slowly. But yes, Sophie, children. This marriage isn't just for show. The waiter returned with the wine, served in silence, and disappeared again. I grabbed my glass and drank more than I should at once, feeling the liquid burn down my throat. What if I run away? The words came out before I could censor them. Dominic didn't blink. Don't run away. Is that a threat? It's advice. He swirled the wine in his glass, looking through the dark red liquid. I don't hurt women, Sophie. I never have. But there are people in my organization who don't share those values. And if you run away, it won't be me who comes after you. So I'm a prisoner. You're a woman who made an impossible choice to save your life and your mother's life. He placed the glass on the table. Don't romanticize it. Don't try to be a martyr. You chose to survive. Now you need to learn to live with that choice. The first courses arrived. Fresh oysters, caviar on blinis, salmon carpaccio. Food I could never have bought with my waitress salary. Food that now tasted like ashes. You're going to continue studying, Dominic said suddenly. I looked up surprised. What? Your college. Nursing. You're going to continue. How? I don't have... I'll pay. He cut a piece of carpaccio with surgical precision. Full tuition, books, everything you need, and you're going to graduate. Why? Because you worked hard for it. And because I don't want a wife who resents me for destroying her dreams. He chewed slowly, thoughtfully. You can hate me for many things, Sophie, but not for preventing you from becoming who you want to be. I didn't know how to respond. That was unexpected. A glimpse of humanity in a man I was sure was a monster. Thank you, I murmured. Don't thank me yet. There are conditions. Of course there were. What conditions? You're going to live with me in my house in Greenwich, Connecticut. It's an hour from Manhattan where your college is. I'll arrange daily transportation. I can't just abandon my apartment. It's already been taken care of. Your belongings will be transferred tomorrow. You can't just... I can. And I already did. He drank more wine. Next condition. You don't talk about my business. With anyone. Not with friends, not with teachers, not with your mother. My mother? Your mother will receive a monthly allowance. Enough to live comfortably. But she won't have your address. She won't have your phone number. You'll contact her when and if I allow it. You can't isolate me. I can, and I will. His voice became harder. Your mother created this situation, Sophie, and she's a risk. Addicts are unpredictable, manipulable. I won't allow her to put you in danger again. Part of me wanted to protest. But another part, the part that had spent years cleaning up Diane's vomit, paying her bar debts, lying to landlords about late rent, that part knew he was right. What about the ceremony? I asked, changing the subject. In 2 weeks. Small. Just close family and important associates. 2 weeks? The sooner the better. Paperwork is already being prepared. And what about the marriage itself? I forced the words out. The conjugal aspects? Dominic watched me for a long moment, and for the first time, I saw something that could be amusement in his eyes. You're asking about sex. I felt my face heat up. I'm asking about expectations. My expectation is that you'll sleep in my room, in my bed. He paused. But I won't force you into anything. I'm not a rapist, Sophie. But you are a mobster. Yes, he didn't deny it, didn't soften it. I am, and you need to understand what that means. It means people will look at you differently. It means you'll need 24-hour security. It means you'll never have a normal life again. I never had a normal life. Something passed across his face. Surprise, perhaps, or recognition. No, you probably didn't. The main course arrived. Filet mignon with potato gratin and asparagus. We ate in silence for a few minutes, the weight of the conversation hanging over the table. Can I ask a question? I tried. Go ahead. Why haven't you married yet? You're 35, rich, powerful. Why did you need an arrangement to find a wife? Dominic wiped his mouth with a napkin, folded it carefully, and placed it beside his plate. Because women in my world come with families, alliances, political expectations, and I don't want to marry for strategy. I want to marry because I chose. But you didn't choose me. You bought me. I chose you the moment I saw you at that gala ball. He leaned across the table, eyes fixed on mine. Your mother's debt was just the tool that allowed me to have you. But make no mistake, Sophie. If it wasn't the debt, I would have found another way. A shiver ran down my spine, not entirely from fear. You're obsessed. I'm focused. He leaned back again. And now you're my focus. Dessert came and went. Panna cotta with red berries that I barely tasted. My mind was spinning, trying to process everything. The marriage, the move, the complete loss of control over my own life. When we left the restaurant, the limousine was already waiting. Dominic helped me in and sat beside me, closer this time. Where are we going? I asked. Home. My home? No, my home. Your home now too. But my things, they're already there. I had people collect them while we were having dinner. I turned to him incredulous. You invaded my apartment. I expedited the transition. He pulled a cigarette from a silver cigarette case, but didn't light it, just twirled it between his fingers. You'll discover that I'm very efficient, Sophie. You're controlling also. His brutal honesty was almost worse than lies. At least with lies, I could cling to the illusion that this was normal, that I had some power. The limousine left Manhattan, crossed the bridge, and continued on I-95 toward Connecticut. The city lights gave way to wooded suburbs, and then to increasingly larger and more isolated properties. When we finally turned into a private entrance, flanked by iron gates, I realized that house was a gross euphemism. The mansion stretched before us, 3 floors of stone and glass, illuminated like a castle. Impeccable gardens, a fountain in the center of the entrance circle, and what appeared to be an entire wing dedicated to garages. Do you live alone here? I asked, stunned. I have a staff, housekeeper, cook, gardeners, security, but yes, essentially alone. He got out of the car and extended his hand. Until now, I took his hand and got out, looking up at that impossible structure. This was real. All of this was real. The front door opened and a woman in her 50s, gray hair pulled back in an elegant bun, appeared. Welcome, Miss Brennan. I'm Mrs. Chen, the housekeeper. She had a slight Chinese accent and kind eyes. Your belongings have already been organized in the master bedroom. Thank you, I murmured. Dominic placed his hand on my back again and guided me inside. The interior was even more impressive. High ceilings, double marble staircases, chandeliers that seemed to have come from Versailles, art on the walls that I was sure were originals. Everything screamed wealth, power, and a refined taste that I would never associate with a criminal. Mrs. Chen will show you the room, Dominic said. Rest. Tomorrow we'll discuss the next steps. And you? I didn't know why I asked. I shouldn't care. I have work. He was already walking toward a side corridor. Don't wait up for me. And then he disappeared, leaving me alone with Mrs. Chen in that cavernous mansion. Come, dear. Mrs. Chen touched my arm gently. You look exhausted. I followed her up the stairs, through a corridor lined with more valuable art, to a double door at the end. She opened it, revealing a room the size of my entire old apartment. King-size bed with silk sheets, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the illuminated gardens, a closet that was practically a separate room, and a marble bathroom with a bathtub that could fit 3 people. "Your clothes have been organized in the closet," Mrs. Chen said. "But Mr. Caruso had a stylist come tomorrow morning. He wants you to have an appropriate wardrobe." "Appropriate for what?" "To be a mobster's trophy wife." Mrs. Chen looked at me with an expression that was part pity, part understanding. "To be the woman of the most powerful man in New York, dear. It's a role that comes with expectations." She left, closing the door softly behind her. I stood in the center of that absurd room, surrounded by luxury I never asked for, trapped in a life I never chose. And then, finally, I broke down. I fell to my knees on the expensive Persian rug and cried. I cried for my lost freedom, for my mother who sold me, for all the plans I had made that had now turned to smoke. I cried until I had no more tears. And when I finally dragged myself to that giant bed, sinking into feather pillows and sheets that smelled like lavender, a single truth hammered in my head. I had sold myself to save my life. Now I needed to figure out if it was still worth living. I woke up with sunlight streaming through the immense windows, disoriented for a moment. The ceiling was too high. The bed was too big. Everything was wrong. Then memory came back like a punch to the stomach. I was in Dominic Caruso's house, my new home, my golden prison. I looked at the other side of the bed, untouched. He hadn't slept here. A small part of me felt relief. Another part, a part I didn't want to examine, felt something like rejection. My phone showed 7:42 a.m. There was a message from an unknown number. "Stylist arrives at 9 a.m. Mrs. Chen will prepare breakfast. I'll be in meetings all day." D short, direct, without emotion, exactly like him. I dragged myself out of bed and explored the bathroom. Expensive beauty products I had never seen except in magazines were perfectly organized on the marble counter. Chanel, La Mer, Tom Ford. Each item probably cost more than my entire monthly allowance. I took a shower that was too long, letting the hot water wash the tension from my muscles. But I couldn't wash away reality. When I went down to the kitchen, Mrs. Chen was already there, preparing a breakfast table that could feed an entire family. Pancakes, fresh fruit, bacon, scrambled eggs, croissants, freshly squeezed juices. "Good morning, Miss Brennan. Did you sleep well?" "Not really." I sat at the table, feeling ridiculous in that enormous space. "You can call me Sophie." "Of course." She smiled warmly and placed a plate in front of me. "Eat. You'll need energy today." "Why?" "The stylist Mr. Caruso hired is intense." She wasn't exaggerating. At 9 o'clock sharp, a tall woman, thin as a blade, entered through the door, followed by 3 assistants carrying clothing racks, shoe boxes, and makeup cases. "Sophie Brennan." She examined me from head to toe with critical eyes. "Isabel Moreau. We'll have a lot of work ahead. Nice to meet. Stand up, let me see you." I stood mechanically while she circled around me like a shark evaluating prey. "Good height. Interesting bone structure. Decent skin, but needs treatment. Hair." She picked up a strand between her fingers. "When was the last time you cut it?" "About 6 months." "Criminal." She dropped my hair with disdain. "And these nails, do you bite them?" I looked at my hands, embarrassed. "Sometimes, when I'm stressed." "Well, that ends now. You're going to represent Dominic Caruso. You can't look like a broke college student." "Hey, no offense, dear, but facts are facts." She snapped her fingers and her assistants began unpacking everything. Now Dominic gave me specific instructions. Elegant, but not ostentatious. Sophisticated, but not old. You need to look like a wife worth having, but also a woman with her own substance. He said that? He said, make her look like a queen who can rule alone. Isabel smiled for the first time. I must admit I was intrigued. Dominic never cared what his companions wore before. I'm not a companion. I'm his future wife. Exactly. She picked up a navy blue silk dress and held it against me. And that means you're political now. Everything you wear, say, or do will reflect on him. Pressure, isn't it? The entire morning was spent trying on clothes. Dresses for formal events, Tailored suits for business dinners, casual clothes, but designer casual, for everyday wear, shoes that cost more than my last semester's tuition. Why do I need all this? I asked, exhausted, after trying on what seemed to be the 50th outfit. Because you're going to appear in public, a lot. Charity gala next week, dinner with business associates on Thursday, and of course, the wedding. Isabel made frantic notes on her tablet. Dominic wants you to be seen. He wants everyone to know he has a wife, that he's a family man now. But why? Why does that matter to someone like him? Isabel stopped and looked at me with a strangely serious expression. Because men in Dominic's position need legitimacy, dear. The mafia isn't like in the movies. They have legitimate businesses now. Corporations, investments, and for that, they need to appear respectable. A beautiful, educated, and loyal wife is part of that image. So I'm just a public relations piece? You're a chess piece. She said this without cruelty, just as fact. But smart chess pieces can change the game. Around 2 p.m, Isabel finally declared that we had made acceptable progress. She and her team left, leaving behind a transformed closet that looked like a luxury boutique. I was beginning to explore the house, because if I was going to be a prisoner, at least I wanted to know my prison. When I heard voices coming from a room downstairs, loud voices, angry ones, I approached silently what seemed to be an office. The door was ajar. Have you lost your mind? It was a man's voice I didn't recognize. Marrying a complete stranger? A waitress? Watch your words, Marco. Dominic's voice was dangerously calm. Your father is rolling in his grave. You should have married someone from the Giordano family. Consolidate the alliance. The alliances are consolidated without me needing to marry for them. But this girl, she doesn't know our world. She's a risk. She's my choice. A choice based on what? You saw her for 5 minutes at a gala ball and decided you wanted her? Marco's voice was tinged with incredulity. This isn't how you operate, Dominic. There was a long pause. When Dominic spoke again, there was something different in his tone. Softer, more honest. Maybe I'm tired of how I operate. What? 35 years, Marco. 35 years doing what's expected, what's strategic, what's best for business. A deep sigh. For once in my life, I want something that's just mine. Not a family alliance, not a business strategy. Just mine. The silence that followed was dense. You're in love with her, Marco said, incredulous. I don't know her long enough to be in love, but you want to be. There was no answer, and somehow, that silence said more than any words. I backed away silently, my heart beating uncontrollably. That didn't make sense. Dominic he couldn't really. Sophie. I froze. I turned slowly. Dominic was standing in the corridor behind me, still wearing his work suit, tie loosened. Had he seen me? Did he know I was listening? How was it with Isabel? His voice revealed nothing. Invasive, expensive, unnecessary. Necessary, he corrected. You'll need all of that to be your well-dressed trophy wife. Something passed through his eyes. Irritation, perhaps. To be yourself, but with the right tools. What kind of philosophical answer is that? He took a step forward, then another, until he was close enough for me to smell his cologne, wood, and spices. You heard my conversation with Marco. It wasn't a question. I considered lying, but what was the point? I heard part of it. And what? What did you think? I think you're trying to convince yourself that this is something beyond what it really is. I raised my chin, defiant. You bought me, Dominic. You can dress it up however you want, but in the end, I'm a transaction. He watched me for a long moment, those dark eyes reading every micro-expression on my face. Do you believe that? I lived it. Then let me give you a different perspective. He leaned in, lowering his voice to a whisper I felt more than heard. I paid your mother's debt, but I didn't buy you. You made a choice. You could have chosen to run, chosen to die, chosen to report everything to the police. But you chose this. You chose to survive. That wasn't a real choice. It was the only choice that matters. He raised his hand, and for a moment, I thought he was going to touch my face. but he just moved away a strand of hair that had fallen over my shoulder. And now you need to decide if you're just going to survive or if you're really going to live. Easy to say when you have all the power. Power? He laughed, a low sound without humor. Sophie, you have more power than you imagine. How so? You're the only thing in this world that I want and can't simply take. He stepped away, creating distance again. I can make you marry me, I can keep you here, but I can't make you want me. I can't force you to choose this. Then why are you doing this? Because I'm selfish. The naked honesty in his voice surprised me. Because I saw you and wanted you, and I always get what I want. Even if it means imprisoning me, even if it means giving you time to decide if you prefer to be a prisoner or a queen. He started to walk away, but stopped at the corridor entrance. Dinner at 7. Wear something from what Isabel brought. We have guests. What guests? People you need to meet. He looked over his shoulder. Welcome to my life, Sophie. I hope you're ready. And then he disappeared, leaving me alone in the corridor with a million conflicting thoughts spinning in my head. 7 o'clock. I went back to the room and looked at the newly stocked closet. Isabel had left some outfits separated with labels. Formal dinner, charity event, elegant casual. I picked the dress marked formal dinner. A dark red that Isabel had insisted enhanced my skin tone. Italian silk, modest but elegant neckline, falling perfectly to my knees. I put it on, pulled my hair into a low bun, subtle makeup, the pearl earrings that had been my grandmother's, the only valuable thing I owned. When I looked in the mirror, I almost didn't recognize the woman staring back at me. She looked sophisticated, confident, like she belonged in this world. But inside, I was still the girl from the Bronx who worked 3 shifts to pay for college. At 7 o'clock sharp, I went down the stairs. The dining room was transformed. The table for 12 was set with porcelain and crystal, lit candles, fresh flowers as centerpieces. And Dominic was there, talking with 3 men and 2 women, all impeccably dressed, all radiating that same aura of dangerous power. When I entered, all conversation stopped. Dominic turned, and something passed across his face when he saw me. Something warm, possessive, and unexpectedly vulnerable. Sophie, he extended his hand. Come, I want to introduce you to the family. I went down the last steps and put my hand in his. And as he guided me to that circle of wolves dressed in designer clothes, I realized a terrible truth. I was no longer just surviving. I was beginning to live. And that terrified me more than anything. Dominic's hand was firm in mine as he guided me to the center of that circle of predators. I could feel their eyes evaluating me, calculating my worth, looking for weaknesses, deciding if I was a threat or just another temporary conquest of Dominic's. Sophie, these are my closest associates. Dominic pointed to a tall man with gray hair, around 50, with eyes sharp as blades. This is Marco De Luca, my advisor and friend since we were children. Marco, the same voice I had heard arguing with Dominic earlier, extended his hand to me. Miss Brennan, it's a pleasure. The hesitation before pleasure didn't go unnoticed. I shook his hand firmly. The pleasure is mine, Mr. De Luca. Marcus is fine. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. After all, we're going to be family soon. This is Vincent Romano and his wife, Carla, Dominic continued. Vincent was younger, maybe 40, with a kind of physique that came from hours at the gym and possibly steroids. Carla was a platinum blonde with injected lips and a dress that left little to the imagination. Dominic finally settled down, Carla said with a smile that was all teeth. I never thought I'd see the day. And these are Isabella and Francesca Moretti, cousins. Dominic indicated 2 women who looked like they had stepped off a Milan runway. Brunettes, elegant, dressed in Valentino and Prada. Welcome to the family, Isabella said. But there was ice in her voice. Francesca just looked me up and down and took a sip of champagne without saying anything. Please sit. Dominic pulled out the chair at the head of the table for himself, and then the chair to his right for me. The message was clear. I was beside him, in the position of power. Mrs. Chen and 2 other staff members began serving the first course, pumpkin soup with white truffle. "So, Sophie," Marco began, his voice too casual to be genuine, "Dominic told us you're studying nursing." "I am. I finish next year." "Fascinating." He didn't seem fascinated. "And do you plan to practice? After the wedding?" The question had hidden claws. I looked at Dominic, but his face was expressionless, waiting to see how I would handle this. "I do plan to, yes. I spent 3 years preparing for this. I'm not going to waste it." "But surely a wife of Dominic has other responsibilities," Carla interjected, swirling her wine. "Social events, charity, eventually children. I'm sure I can do both," I replied, keeping my voice firm. "Ambitious." Francesca finally spoke, her tone making it sound like an insult. Dominic's last companions were satisfied just being beautiful. "Sophie isn't a companion," Dominic said, his voice cutting through the table like a blade. "She's my fiancée, and I suggest you all treat her with the respect that position deserves." The silence that followed was tense. Isabella cleared her throat. "Of course, Dominic. We're just curious. You understand? This was so sudden." "Life is sudden." He cut a piece of bread with surgical precision. "You adapt or get left behind." Vincent laughed, a deep, uncomfortable sound. "Well said. So, when's the big day?" 2 weeks, Saturday, private ceremony on the property." "So fast?" Carla's eyes widened. "But the planning, the invitations, it's all arranged," Dominic said with finality. I realized then that this wasn't a social dinner. It was a test. Dominic was presenting me to his inner circle, letting them evaluate me, provoke me, try to break me. And he was watching, both them and me, to see who would fail. "Sophie," Isabella leaned forward, her eyes glittering with malicious curiosity. "Do you know Dominic's family, his background?" "I know enough." "I doubt it." Francesca smiled. "Do you know that his father built this empire from nothing? That he fought bloody wars through the streets of New York in the 80s? "Francesca," Dominic warned. "She should know what she's marrying into, cousin." Francesca didn't take her eyes off me. "She should know that men in Dominic's position have enemies. People who would love to use a beautiful and innocent wife as leverage." "You're trying to scare me," I said calmly. "I'm trying to educate you." "Then let me educate you back." I put my fork on the table and looked directly at her. "I grew up in the Bronx. My father abandoned us when I was 6. My mother is a gambling addict who spent every penny we had. I worked 3 jobs to pay for college while taking care of her. So no, Francesca, I'm not innocent, and I'm definitely not fragile." The corner of Dominic's mouth curved into an almost imperceptible smile. Francesca blinked, clearly not expecting the response. Isabella took her place. "But you understand that this isn't just about you. When you marry Dominic, you become part of something bigger. There are rules, expectations, loyalties you can't break." "Like omertà?" I said, the Italian word for the mafia's code of silence. Marco choked on his wine. Vincent stopped chewing. "You did your homework," Isabella said, surprised. "I read a lot, watched a lot of documentaries." I leaned back in my chair. "I know that wives of men like Dominic don't talk to authorities. I know they see things and pretend they didn't see them. I know they smile in public and keep secrets in private." I looked around the table. "I'm not stupid. I know exactly what I'm getting into." "Then why did you accept?" Marco asked, his voice genuinely curious now. "Because the alternative was to die." The brutal honesty stopped everyone in place. "And now?" Vincent asked. "Now that you're safe, that the debt is paid, why are you still here?" I looked at Dominic. He was watching me with that intensity that made me simultaneously uncomfortable and strangely warm. "Because I made a choice," I said slowly, "and I don't go back on my choices." Something passed between us in that moment, a silent understanding, an unspoken agreement. The rest of dinner passed with lighter conversation, but I could feel that I had passed some kind of test. The cousins still looked at me with suspicion, but there was a spark of respect now. Marco still seemed skeptical, but no longer openly hostile. Vincent and Carla seemed more intrigued than anything else. When they finally left around 11, Dominic walked me to the entrance hall. "You did well," he said, loosening his tie. "They were testing me, obviously. And you let them." "Of course." He turned to face me. "I needed to see if you could defend yourself, if you would crumble under pressure. And if I had crumbled, then I would have protected you. But I prefer a wife who can fight her own battles." He took a step closer. "You surprised me today." "How?" "The way you spoke to Francesca, the way you didn't back down." His eyes searched mine. "The way you admitted you made a choice and are honoring it." "I didn't say I liked the choice." "No, but you respected it." He raised his hand and this time really touched my face. Just his fingers brushing my cheek. "That's all I need, Sophie. For now." My heart was beating too fast, too hard. And later? Later. He leaned in, his lips so close to my ear I felt his warm breath. "Later I want you to choose this. Choose me. Not because you have to, but because you want to." He stepped away before I could respond and started up the stairs. "Dominic," I called. He stopped, looking over his shoulder. "What happens if I never choose you?" He was silent for a long moment. Then, without turning completely, he answered, "Then I'll spend the rest of my life trying to change your mind." And with that, he disappeared into the upper corridor. I stood alone in the entrance hall, my heart still beating uncontrollably, my skin still tingling where he had touched me. 3 days passed in a blur of wedding preparations, meetings with event planners, and more sessions with Isabel, who was determined to transform me into a suitable wife. Dominic was busy with business, meetings that lasted until late at night, phone calls in Italian that he made when he thought I wasn't listening. But every night, he returned to that room we shared, or should have shared. He always arrived late, always showered, and always slept on his side of the bed, maintaining a respectful distance between us. But I could feel the tension, the way his eyes followed me when he thought I wasn't looking, the way his jaw tightened when I came out of the bathroom in a robe, the way he forced himself to turn away every night. It was on the 5th night that something changed. I had stayed up late studying. I had exams coming up and wasn't going to let my education crumble just because my life had been turned upside down. I was sitting on the bed with books scattered around me when Dominic entered. He stopped at the entrance, watching me. "You study a lot," he said. "I have a lot to prove." "To whom?" "To myself." He approached the bed, picked up one of my books, Human Anatomy, and flipped through the pages. "You want to save lives?" "Yes." "Why?" The question caught me off guard. "Why not? Most people don't care enough about strangers to dedicate years studying how to keep them alive. Maybe I'm not most people." "No, you definitely aren't." He put the book back and sat on the edge of the bed, closer than he had been since we got married. "When did you decide to become a nurse?" "When I was 16. My mother had an overdose of pills. Not on purpose, just too many with alcohol. I called 911 and a paramedic came. She saved my mother's life and then she stayed with me, waited until I stopped shaking, gave me her number in case I needed someone to talk to." I looked at my hands. No one had ever done that for me before. No one had ever seen me as more than the drunk's daughter. When I looked up, Dominic was watching me with an expression I couldn't decipher. "You're incredibly strong, you know that?" "I don't feel strong. Strong people never do." He reached out and took my hand, the first time he had initiated physical contact beyond that caress on my face days ago. "You survived things that would break grown people, and still, you want to dedicate your life to helping others. And you dedicate your life to hurting others," I said quietly. He didn't deny it. "Yes, I do." "Why?" "Because it's what I know. It's what my father taught me. It's the world I was born into." He stroked my hand with his thumb. "But sometimes I wonder what my life would have been like if I had been born into a different world. You could leave." "No, I can't." His voice was absolutely certain. "Once you're in, there's no way out. Not alive. Doesn't that scare you?" "Every day." He looked at our intertwined fingers. "But you know what scares me more?" "What?" "The idea of never having met you." My heart skipped. "Dominic, I know you didn't choose me. I know this was forced on you. He looked up, and there was a vulnerability there I had never seen before. But I hope, I pray, that someday you'll see me as more than the man who imprisoned you. As what? As the man who would adore you if you'd let him. The air between us changed. It became denser, charged with something dangerous and inevitable. I don't know if I can do this, I whispered. I know, and I'm not asking now. He brought my hand to his lips and kissed my knuckles, a gesture so tender it made my chest ache. I'm just asking that you don't close the door completely. Before I could respond, his phone rang. He checked the screen and his expression changed instantly, from vulnerable to lethal. I need to take this. He left the room, but not before I heard his first words. How much blood? And suddenly I was reminded this wasn't a romance. It wasn't a fairy tale. I had married a man who lived in violence, and now, so did I. Dominic didn't return to the room that night. I stayed awake until 3 a.m, listening to the distant sounds of tense voices, slamming doors, cars leaving. Something had happened. Something bad. When I finally fell asleep, I dreamed of blood on Dominic's hands. Blood he tried to wash but never came off completely. I woke to morning light streaming through the curtains and the smell of strong coffee. I went downstairs and found Mrs. Chen in the kitchen, her face tense with worry. "Good morning, Sophie. Mr. Caruso asked me to inform you that he'll be out today. Urgent business." "What kind of business?" She avoided my gaze. "The kind it's better not to ask about." "Mrs. Chen," I touched her arm gently. "Please, I need to know what's happening." She sighed deeply, looking towards the door as if checking we were alone. "There was an incident last night. One of Mr. Caruso's warehouses in Brooklyn was attacked. 3 men were killed." My stomach churned. "Killed?" "It was an ambush. The Antonelli family, old rivals, decided to test the limits." She lowered her voice. "Mr. Caruso is dealing with the situation." "Dealing how?" Her silence was answer enough. I spent the day trying to study, but the words in the books blurred. All I could think about was Dominic, where he was, what he was doing, if he was safe, and then I hated myself for caring. He was a criminal, a killer probably. Why should I care if he came home or not? But I did care. Against all logic, against every instinct of self-preservation, I cared. Around 5 p.m, I heard cars arriving. I ran to the window and saw Dominic's black limousine, followed by 2 SUVs. Men got out of the vehicles, all armed, all with tense expressions. And then Dominic emerged. He was alive, whole, but there was something different about him, something darker, more dangerous. His suit was stained, not with blood, but with dirt and something that could have been ash. His face was like stone. When he entered the house, Mrs. Chen immediately stepped away, giving him space. Marco was right behind him, speaking rapidly in Italian. "Dominic," I called from the top of the stairs. He stopped, looked up, and for a moment I saw something like relief pass through his eyes. But then the mask returned. "Not now, Sophie. Are you okay?" "I am, but I need to take care of some things." He started to turn, but stopped. "Stay inside the house today, and don't go out without security. Understood?" "What happened?" "Nothing you need to worry about." "If it's affecting my freedom of movement, then it's something I need to worry about." Marco murmured something to Dominic that I couldn't hear. Dominic responded with a sharp negative and then climbed the stairs to me. "Come." He took my hand and pulled me to our room, closing the door behind us. Once inside, he went straight to the built-in bar, pouring scotch. He drank half the glass at once. "Are you going to tell me what happened?" I asked calmly. "Why? So you can have one more reason to hate me?" "I don't hate you." He laughed, a bitter sound. "You should." "Dominic, 3 of my men died last night, Sophie." He turned to face me, and for the first time, I saw real emotion breaking through his mask of control. 3 men with families, children. One of them had just had a baby 2 weeks ago, and they died because someone decided I was getting too powerful, too comfortable. The Antonelli. "Mrs. Chen has a big mouth," he muttered, but there was no anger in it. "What are you going to do?" "What I have to do." He finished the scotch and placed the glass on the table with enough force to crack it. I'm going to remind them why nobody messes with me or what's mine. And that means more violence, more deaths. Welcome to my world. He started taking off his stained jacket. This is what I've protected you from until now. But you need to understand, this is who I am. This is what I do. And it will continue to be as long as I breathe. I watched as he unbuttoned his shirt, revealing his muscular torso with several scars, evidence of a life of violence. One especially large one ran from his shoulder to his ribs. What happened there? I asked, pointing to the scar. Knife. 8 years ago. A guy who thought he could catch me off guard. He touched the scar absently. He was wrong. Is he dead? Yes. Did you kill him? Yes. The brutal honesty should have scared me, should have made me run. But instead, I just took a step closer. Do you ever regret it? He stopped, shirt half unbuttoned, and looked at me with an intensity that made my chest tighten. Him? No. He would have killed me if I hadn't acted first. A pause. But others? Yes. There are people I've hurt who didn't deserve it. Choices I made because it was easier, not because it was right. So you have a conscience. Having a conscience and acting according to it are two very different things. He finished taking off his shirt and threw it on a chair. In my world, Sophie, conscience gets you killed. Then why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know the truth. He took a step toward me, then another, until he was close enough for me to feel the heat from his body. You deserve to know exactly what kind of monster you're going to marry in 9 days. You're not a monster. No! He raised his hands, those strong and dangerous hands. These hands have taken lives, Sophie. Broken bones, caused pain. How does that not make me a monster? I did something that surprised me as much as it did him. I took his hands in mine. I studied them. The scars on the knuckles, the tattoo of a rose on his left wrist, the strength contained in them. These hands also built an empire, I said quietly. Fed families, protected people you love. And last night, I looked up to meet his eyes. Last night you stayed awake worried about the men you lost. Monsters don't do that. Something broke in his eyes, that carefully constructed wall cracking just a little. Sophie, his voice was hoarse. I'm not saying I approve of what you do. I'm not saying I understand, but I took a deep breath. But I'm saying you're more complicated than just a criminal. And maybe that's the most dangerous thing about you. Why dangerous? Because it would be much easier to hate you if you were simply evil. He closed his eyes for a moment as if my words had caused physical pain. When he opened them again, there was something raw there, something unprotected. I don't deserve your compassion. Probably not. I gave a small, sad smile. But apparently I'm stupid enough to give it to you anyway. He slowly raised his hand, giving me time to pull away. When I didn't, he caressed my face with a tenderness that completely contradicted everything I knew about him. You're going to destroy me, he whispered. How? By making me want to be better than I am. Before I could respond, someone knocked roughly on the door. Dominic immediately changed. The vulnerability disappeared, replaced by the stone mask. What? He barked. Dom, we need to talk, now! It was Marco's voice, urgent. Dominic sighed, dropped his hand from my face. I need to go. I know. He grabbed a clean shirt from the closet and put it on quickly. But before leaving, he turned to me one more time. Sophie? Yes, thank you for not seeing me as just a monster. He gave a small, sad smile, even though that's exactly what I am. And then he was gone, leaving me alone with a whirlwind of emotions I couldn't name. The next few days passed in frantic preparation for the wedding. Isabel was in full wedding planner mode, micromanaging every detail. The dress, a stunning Vera Wang that probably cost more than a car, was delivered and fitted. Invitations were sent, flowers were chosen. And through all of this, Dominic was absent. He left early every morning and returned late every night if he returned at all. When our paths crossed, there was a tension between us, not uncomfortable but charged, as if we were both waiting for something to happen, but neither of us wanted to take the first step. It was 3 nights before the wedding that everything changed again. I was in the garden, a place that had become my refuge, when I heard screams coming from the house. Not normal voices, real screams. I ran inside and found chaos in the entrance hall. Dominic was there, being held back by Marco and Vincent, and in front of him was a woman I had never seen, maybe in her early 20s, beautifully dressed with tears streaming down her face. "How could you?" she was screaming. "How could you do this to him?" "Sophia, you need to leave. Now." Dominic's voice was dangerously calm. "He was my brother, and you killed him like a dog in the street." My blood froze. "I had no choice," Dominic said, his voice like steel. "He betrayed me, worked with the Antonelli, put all of us at risk. He was family, and he chose a side, the wrong side." Sophia lunged forward, but Marco stopped her. "I'm going to destroy you for this. I swear to God, Dominic Caruso, I'm going to make you pay for every tear I shed for my brother." "Get her out of here," Dominic ordered, and 2 security guards appeared to escort Sophia out. She continued screaming threats as she was led away. When the door finally closed, the silence was deafening. That's when Dominic saw me standing on the stairs. Our eyes met across the space, and I saw something I had never seen before on his face. Shame. "Sophie, you killed her brother." It wasn't a question. He betrayed me, was passing information to our enemies, caused the deaths of those 3 men at the warehouse. And for that you executed him. Yes, no excuses, no elaborate justifications. Just yes. I should have been horrified, should have been running, screaming, demanding he let me go. But all I felt was an empty numbness. "In 9 days," I said, my voice strangely calm, "I'm going to marry a killer." "Sophie, no." I raised my hand. "Don't try to explain. Don't try to justify. I already knew who you were, but knowing and seeing are different things. Do you want to cancel the wedding?" He asked the question calmly, but I saw the tension in his jaw. I thought about it. Really thought about it. I could say yes. I could pack my things and leave. He would let me go. I knew that somehow. But where would I go? Back to the apartment in the Bronx? Back to my mother who sold me? Back to working 3 jobs and barely surviving? And more than that, a part of me, a part I was beginning to fear recognizing, didn't want to leave. "No," I said finally. "I don't want to cancel." Something flashed in his eyes. Relief, surprise, and something deeper. "Why?" "Because I made a choice. And unlike you, I don't go back on it just because it gets difficult." I went down the last steps until I was facing him. "But let me be clear, Dominic. I'm going to marry you. I'm going to stand by your side in public. I'm going to play the role you need me to play. But don't ask me to approve of what you do. Don't ask me to pretend it's okay. I would never ask that." "Good." I passed by him toward the stairs, but stopped and looked back. "And Dominic, if you ever lie to me, if you ever put me in a position where I have to choose between my conscience and you, I'm going to choose my conscience. I would expect nothing less from you." I went up the stairs, entered our room, and for the first time in days locked the door. And when I finally allowed the tears to fall, I didn't know if I was crying for myself, for Sophia's brother, or for the impossible future I had chosen. 3 days later, at 6 in the evening on a perfect autumn Saturday, I put on my wedding dress. Mrs. Chen helped fasten the buttons on the back, her hands trembling but gentle. "You look beautiful, dear," she whispered. I looked in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back at me. The dress was a masterpiece. Italian lace, cathedral train, neckline that was elegant without being revealing. My hair was styled in soft waves. Natural but impeccable makeup. I looked like a bride. A real bride. But all I felt was fear. There was a knock on the door. Isabella, not the cousin, but Isabel the stylist, entered. "It's time," she said softly. I went down the stairs and out to the garden where the ceremony would be held. Only 50 guests, all family or close associates of Dominic's. None of my friends, none of my family except my mother, who was sitting in the last pew looking more sober than I had seen her in years. And then I saw Dominic. He was standing under an arch of white roses, wearing a tailored black suit that made him look like a prince of darkness. And when our eyes met, everything else disappeared. The music began, something classical and beautiful that I didn't recognize. I started walking. Each step took me closer to the man who had bought my freedom, who had killed to protect his empire, who had shown me tenderness and brutality in equal measures. Each step took me closer to a life I had never planned. And when I finally reached him and he extended his hand, I took it. And I wondered if I was making the biggest mistake of my life, or if, against all odds, I was beginning my real life. The priest began to speak, but I barely heard the words. All I could think was, there's no going back. And when Dominic said, I do, and all eyes turned to me, waiting for my answer, I realized this was the last moment. The last moment where I was still Sophie Brennan. After this, I would be Sophie Caruso, wife of a mobster, and nothing would ever be the same again. I do, I said, my voice steadier than I expected, and with that word, I sealed my fate. 6 months later, the Mount Sinai Hospital ICU was quiet at 3 a.m, except for the constant beeping of heart monitors and the whisper of mechanical ventilators. I was checking the vital signs of the patient in bed 7 when my phone vibrated in my pocket. I need you. Now. D. My heart raced. Dominic never texted me during my shift unless it was urgent. And urgent, in his world, rarely meant anything good. I told my supervisor I had a family emergency and ran to the parking lot, where one of Dominic's black SUVs was already waiting. Tommy, one of the security guards, opened the door without saying a word. Where? I asked, getting in. Warehouse in Red Hook. The boss is... He specifically asked for you. 20 minutes later, the car stopped in front of an industrial building that looked abandoned. But I knew better. This was one of Dominic's safe locations, places where business was conducted away from prying eyes. Tommy escorted me inside, through poorly lit corridors to a room in the back. And what I saw made me stop at the door. Dominic was sitting in a chair, shirt soaked with blood, while Marco tried to apply pressure to a wound on his shoulder. 3 other men were in the room, all armed, all tense. Sophie, the relief in Dominic's voice was palpable. Thank God. I went into professional mode instantly, pushing terror aside. What happened? Grazing bullet wound. Went through the other side. He grimaced when Marco pressed harder. How long ago? 40 minutes. Why the hell didn't you go to a hospital? Because bullets need to be reported, and I can't afford that attention right now. He looked at me with those dark eyes that had learned to read my every expression. Can you do this? I quickly assessed the wound. The bullet had gone through the fleshy part of the shoulder, avoiding major arteries. He was lucky, very lucky. I need supplies. Sterile bandages, saline solution, needle and suture thread, antibiotics. It's already here. Marco pointed to a medical case in the corner. We keep it stocked for situations like this. Of course they did. I washed my hands in an improvised sink and opened the case. It had everything I needed. Hospital-quality medical equipment. They really prepared for everything. This is going to hurt, I warned Dominic as I prepared the area. I know. He took my free hand and squeezed it. But I trust you. Those words, so simple, but loaded with so much weight, almost made me pause. 6 months ago, I was a stranger forced into this world. Now, I was the person he called when he was bleeding. I worked quickly and efficiently, cleaning the wound, suturing both the entry and exit, applying bandages. Dominic didn't make a sound during the entire process, just squeezed my hand hard enough to leave marks. Done, I said finally, securing the last bandage. But you need proper IV antibiotics, and this needs to be monitored for infection. You'll monitor it. Dominic, Sophie. He pulled my hand, bringing me closer despite the obvious pain the movement caused. I trust you. Only you. The other men silently left the room, giving us privacy. Marco was the last to leave, closing the door behind him. What happened? I asked quietly. The Antonelli, again. They don't learn. He leaned his head against the wall behind him, exhausted. They tried to get me leaving a meeting in Brooklyn. They failed, obviously, but they got this. He indicated his shoulder. And the shooters? Dead. Of course they were. This is never going to end, is it? It wasn't really a question. Not as long as I'm alive. He opened his eyes and stared at me. I warned you about this world, Sophie. I didn't lie about what it would be. I know. I sat in the chair next to him, suddenly exhausted. Doesn't mean it gets easier seeing you bleeding. You care. There was wonder in his voice. You really care. Obviously I care, you idiot. You're my husband. A slow smile spread across his face. That rare and genuine smile he only showed me. Say it again. What? That you're an idiot? That I'm your husband? I looked at him. This impossible man who had turned my life upside down. 6 months ago, I would have said those words with bitterness. But now, you're my husband, I repeated. And this time, there was no bitterness, just truth. He pulled my hand to his lips and kissed my wedding ring, the platinum ring with diamonds that I still wasn't completely used to wearing. And you're my wife, my partner, the woman who keeps me human when I forget how to be. Dominic, I love you, Sophie. The air left my lungs. He had shown me in hundreds of small ways over the past months, paying for my college, respecting my study schedule, never forcing me into anything, protecting me from the darker parts of his world. But he had never said the words. You don't have to say it back, he continued quickly. I know this started wrong. I know you didn't choose me for love, but I need you to know I love you, completely, desperately, in a way that scares even me. Tears stung my eyes. You really know how to pick your moments, don't you? Covered in blood in an abandoned warehouse. Almost dying has a way of clarifying priorities. He caressed my face with his good hand. So, are you going to leave me hanging? I thought about all the months that had passed. The nights when he came home late and still found me awake studying, bringing coffee and silently sitting beside me. The mornings when I woke up to small gifts, a rare medical book, tickets to a lecture I had mentioned in passing. The way he looked at me when I came out of the shower, with that mixture of desire and reverence that made my heart race. The way he had never touched me beyond chaste kisses until I had given permission. 3.5 months of self-imposed celibacy because he wanted me to truly choose him. And I had chosen. Somewhere between anger and resentment, I had chosen him. I love you too, I whispered. I didn't want to. I fought against it. But I love you, Dominic Caruso. God help me, I love you. The kiss he gave me was urgent, desperate, full of 6 months of contained tension. I leaned carefully against him, conscious of his wound, but unable to resist the closeness we had both desired for so long. Take me home, I said against his lips. You have work. I called in saying I had a family emergency, and you, injured husband, are definitely an emergency. I stood up and extended my hand. Come on, you need to rest, and I need to monitor that wound. And after I rest? There was promise in his eyes. After you rest, we'll see. The smile he gave me was pure sin. Back at the mansion, I helped Dominic to our room for real now, not just his with my presence tolerated. Mrs. Chen had already prepared everything, as always. She had a sixth sense for these things. I helped Dominic lie down, checked his bandages one more time, and administered antibiotics from the private medical reserve we now kept at home. Bossy nurse, he murmured, but he was smiling. Do you want this infection to heal or not? I want you to come to bed. I'm coming. Let me just... Sophie. He took my hand. Come to bed, please. There was something in his voice, a vulnerability he rarely showed. I took off my nurse's uniform and put on a nightgown. Then carefully, I lay down beside him, avoiding his injured shoulder. He pulled me closer, burying his face in my hair. I thought I was going to die today. For a second, when the bullet hit me, I thought, this is it. This is how it ends. But it wasn't. No. And do you know what my first thought was after I realized I was going to survive? He pulled back just enough to look me in the eyes. I thought, I still have time with her. I still have time to make her truly love me. You already have that, you idiot. I know. Now I know. He kissed my forehead. And I promise you, Sophie, I'm going to spend the rest of my life earning it. The rest of your life might be shorter than you think if you keep putting yourself in situations where you get shot. Then you'll have to keep me alive. It's a full-time job. Good. He smiled against my skin. Because I plan to keep you busy for the next 50 years or more. We lay in silence for a while, just breathing together, the weight of everything that had happened, and everything still to come, hanging over us. Sophie, he murmured sleepily. Thank you for saving me. Again. Always, I promised. And I meant it in every way. 2 years later, I graduated from nursing school at the top of my class. Dominic was in the front row, applauding louder than anyone else, with Marco and half of his criminal organization behind him. Probably the only graduation in university history with so many armed men in the audience. I started working at Mount Sinai, as I had always planned. But I also started something new, a free clinic in the Bronx, secretly funded by Dominic, where people without insurance could receive treatment, especially people connected to the underworld who couldn't go to regular hospitals. It was my way of balancing the scales. He took lives, I saved them. Diane went into rehab, the third attempt, but this time it seemed to be working. I visited her once a month, always with security, always careful. Our relationship would never be what it should have been, but we were trying. And Dominic was still who he had always been, dangerous, powerful, ruthless in his business. But with me, he was different, gentle, thoughtful, a husband who woke me up with coffee and waited up for me no matter how late my shift ended. We still had our challenges, nights when he came home covered in blood that wasn't his, moments when I questioned whether I could really live in this world, fights about secrets he couldn't tell me, and boundaries I wouldn't cross. But we also had something real, something that had grown from ashes and become fire. It was on an ordinary Thursday night, while we were having dinner in the kitchen, just the two of us, no ceremony, no performances, that I changed everything. Dominic? He was reading something on his tablet, probably business reports. I'm pregnant. The tablet slipped from his hand and hit the table. He looked at me as if I had just said the moon was made of cheese. What? Pregnant? With a baby? Your baby? I placed my hand on my still flat stomach. 8 weeks. For a long moment he just stared at me. Then slowly a smile spread across his face. That rare and genuine smile that illuminated everything. A baby? He stood up and came to me, kneeling beside my chair. We're going to have a baby. We are. I took his hand and placed it on my belly. Scared? Terrified. He laughed, a sound full of wonder and joy, but also complete. For the first time in my life, Sophie, I feel complete. He kissed my belly, then my lips, then held my face as if I were the most precious thing in the world. I love you, he murmured. Both of you, my family. We love you too. And there, in that kitchen, with the man who had started as my captor and become my partner, my love, my future, I realized I had found something I never looked for. I had found a home, not in the mansion or the expensive things or the power that came with the Caruso surname, but in him, in this impossible and complicated man who loved me with the same fierce intensity with which he did everything else. 6 years ago, I was a waitress serving champagne at a gala ball. Now I was Sophie Caruso, wife, nurse, future mother. And against all odds, against all logic, I was happy. The life I had chosen, or that had chosen me, wasn't perfect. It never would be. But it was mine, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.